You're on.
Now, we want to welcome our viewers from across the United States and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room. Good morning, good day, good evening. This is EdTech Situation Room, episode number 351 on May 1st, 2025. My name is Jason Neiffer, and I'm the Executive Director of Montana Digital Academy, the state virtual school located on the beautiful University of Montana campus in fabulous Western Montana. And joining me tonight, as always, good evening, Dr. Wes Fryer. It feels like it's been a month since I've seen you, and in fact, it has been a month since I've seen you.
Indeed, it has, Jason. I am thrilled to be here with you since we haven't done this in a long time. And today was my last day to teach AP Computer Science for this semester. And that is a joyous event. So I have enjoyed it. But I am normally a middle school STEM and media literacy teacher here in Charlotte, North Carolina. But due to the resignation of a colleague, I have had some high school students in a couple classes this year. So very excited to be here, and I love your Big Sky Country. And did I understand you actually took that picture? That's not a stock photo from, the web.
Right, or an AI generated like create a big sky country, Montana. Yeah, this is on the beautiful road between Missoula and Great Falls. I've been spending a lot of time on that road. Oh, I'd last 6 months or so hanging out with my parents in Great Falls, helping to keep them moving along. And I have to say, the spring. I mean, I think spring is the most beautiful time everywhere. It's by far my favorite season, but in Montana, it's truly beautiful, and you can kind of see in the background there. It's not only beautiful sky, but it's starting to get very green in Montana. And so we're going to cross our fingers that it doesn't lead to a fire season at any point sometime soon, or anytime soon, I should say. And yeah, it's a real joy to be in this beautiful state during the springtime.
How has the snow been for the winter? Have you guys had a light or heavy snow season?
It's interesting. I think it ended up being just below average, which is actually not the best news ever in light of the current in light of the current trends over the last 25 years. But it's also still snowing here. So there was
What?
there was a story tonight that near Livingston, south of the state, just north of Yellowstone National Park, there was enough snow apparently to close the highway down. And according to the pictures, it was nice, thick, wet snow. So
Wow.
kind of that's more like a September thing than a May thing. But we're
Well,
just gonna roll with it and see what
we
happens.
we have a daughter who has just finished her last final, and yesterday or tomorrow is going to head up to Idaho and West Yellowstone with some friends,
Mhm.
and cannot go to our neighbor's cabin due to the fact that there is too much snow in there. So
Yeah,
yeah, wild.
and it's May. I want to note for the record. So
Indeed.
Dr. Fryer, I don't think it's weather.com's podcast. What do we talk about here on the Education Situation Room?
We are going to talk normally about the past week's technology news through an educational lens. But since we have not been here for a month, it'll be about 4 weeks. But I'm sure I definitely have a little more articles just from this week. But we are going to apply our skills of analysis. We are going to talk about a lot of AI stuff, and we're going to process the changing world. So today, I like that you said, duh, of course, AI is our first topic. But you've also got a nice subsection there on stuff to try. I put a few articles about chatbots in there, which are pretty eye-opening. I don't know how to say the word sycophancy. Is that right?
Sycophancy.
Sycophancy. Yes, a big
Yeah.
topic in the latest version of OpenAI and that hard fork. Yeah, it was a great episode. We've got some Google news, some copyright news, and of course our Geeks of the Week. Shocking. I think I'll just do one Geek of the Week, but it's a really good one. So where would you like to start tonight with hard topics?
Well, it seems like AI is going to dominate, but let's just do the two non-AI articles to start off with, which I think both look like they may have something to do with
I was
AI.
going to say, in
And
true
then,
form, they're just going to get us back to AI. So
yeah, so I might
sure.
as well do it. So why don't you start with Mr. Musk and his copyright ninja move?
Okay, so this is coming from The Verge a couple days ago, and the headline is Elon Musk's apparent power play at the Copyright Office completely backfired. By the way, if you want to get these links, you can go to edtechsr.com/links, and you can access our Google Doc. So this was something that was rumored with all the tech bros being on the stage at inauguration time that, with the push for AI and AI competition, the big tech companies not only don't want to be regulated, but they also don't want to, mess with this little copyright law thing that has been, causing the New York Times to have this big lawsuit with OpenAI. And there have been a number of other lawsuits. Artists, other kinds of creators, writers are very concerned about the scraping of their content without permission or compensation. But apparently, the folks that were replaced are not friendly to the technology company position on trying to say, hey, it's just fair use, everybody. And as you might guess, media industry and the lobbyists that serve the various media interests have been mobilized to not allow such changes in policy to happen. So the article gives the impression that we are not going to be seeing dramatic change in Copyright Office guidelines when it comes to AI and copyright. And I personally think that's a good thing. I think that our copyright law has served us well. It is complicated. Fair use is not easy. It is a weird question to think about. Are these AIs, do they have, what is fair use in the world of artificial intelligence? And I'd love to hear your position on that. But these companies are making and have, billions and billions of dollars. It's not like they're in the poorhouse trying to do this. This is a lot of tough stuff to wrestle with. But anyway, this was actually, I thought, a favorable article coming out of Washington, D.C., which we don't necessarily always have these days. So what's your take?
Yeah, well, I thought that was very interesting too, and I shared another article too from Reuters on May 1st. I'd heard about this and just threw a link into the Reuters article, but the judge in the Meta case had made a similar comment, saying that if you take the argument of AI makers at face value, it has the chance of completely I almost called it obliterating the market for original work. So I think that would also makes a lot of sense too. And I have to say that in general, I lean towards copyright law continuing to be enforced, but there is a couple caveats that I think are pretty important. The first one is I think protections for copyright last too long, and they were never intended to be, the 100 years that they are now. And in a lot of cases, a lot of media empires, 4 generations after they were started, continued to thrive based on, the lack of expiration of copyright. We have to re-examine that, but that's a different issue than here. But I still think there's some exception to be made, and we need to figure out something about how is it then that you use copyright materials that you've purchased, right? Or licensed, if you prefer to use it in more modern vernacular. How do you use that using an AI tool? I think there's a lot of very interesting uses of AI that involve taking a source and processing it in some way, shape, or form with an AI bot. It's something that I do very regularly. I try to be very careful, especially with things I'm doing in context of work, that I own a physical copy of that book, so it's sitting on my bookshelf at the office, so that if push ever comes to shove, then at least we had licensed it in some way, shape, or form. But what gives you the right to utilize these incredible tool sets with things that you have purchased, whether it's used or you've rented temporarily or borrowed temporarily through a library? Those are all questions and infrastructures we're going to have to develop. But I will say that I do think that there is a bit, but when I say a bit, it's like that much merit to the argument that enforcing copyright in law in the United States does put us at a disadvantage against arguably our largest threat. I'm not sure if I like that term. Maybe it's competitor in international AI development, which is China, which is well known for ignoring intellectual property in order to get ahead in commercial value. Now, does that turn 2 centuries worth of copyright law, and since especially since the early days of these tools have proven that the works aren't protected while they're in AI? That's a really good question. And I also think it's problematic if we need to develop models from scratch again, because I think we'd have a hard time doing that, and then not losing an international edge. But again, that's about that much of a much grander argument for me. So, you're right, it's complicated, and I can see both sides, but I also think that we need to protect creators.
An aside, and then I have a related follow up to that. uBlock Origin, is now not supported by Chrome, and I finally did remove it. I've been wondering why uBlock Origin Lite wasn't working when I was just trying to enable it with my, what is this, Extensity? But it's because it required new permissions. I had to go into my regular Chrome settings and re-enable it in order to get it to work. So I'm glad it's still working. Because anyway, I was looking at this saying, why are there all these ads here? I am starting to think that I do not want to entirely give in to the tech bros and others who want to cast AI entirely as this existential competition with China. Ultimately, and in the short term, it does appear that China is going to take Taiwan in a few years, and we may have military conflict with them. But, we are going to have to learn how to cooperate and get along on this planet. Hopefully, we're going to be able to, share the value of democracy and human rights, and we're not going to give up on trying to encourage others to, follow and respect these rights and follow the practices of self-government and trying to make that better. So, I think that we don't want to abdicate all the ideals of copyright in the name of the AI competition. And I think there's important work to be done here. Our middle daughter has just taken the LSAT again and is, contemplating law school, and would I think at this point still like to start in the fall. I have no idea what she's going to go into, but there's some really important work to do in the arena of intellectual property. And I don't think that these AIs are sentient, and I don't think that they should have rights any more than I think a corporation should have rights, which they actually they do at this point in terms of, campaign finance and donations and things. But I do think there's something to this idea of ingesting and bringing in content and then being able to make a remix and a different version of it. So I think that there are elements of fair use to all this. And I would just say overall, as both a middle school and high school classroom teacher this year, I've been visiting with my kids about copyright. It's part of the AP Computer Science Principles curriculum. Not only copyright, but also Creative Commons and those kinds of things. And, in my other web design and coding classes, we've talked about it as well. So I think that we need to be talking about these issues and also talking about the fluidity with which these things can change and regulation can affect them. And I'm not sure how many teachers are keeping up with that, but I think it is important for us to do. And, it's going to be important to follow that meta case as well as what will happen with some of these other legal challenges in addition to the changes at the U.S. Copyright Office. All right.
Absolutely. Well, Wes, and if I could do a couple of quick follow-up pieces that are related to things that you said. First, uBlock Origin stopped working for me as well. And so I do want to recommend a tool you might want to try. It's called NextDNS, which is a DNS server that you can point your phone, your computers to that de facto blocks ads. And I've started playing with it. It's one of the things that's hard about it is that because it takes over the whole DNS, it means that you don't get the chance to unblock something like an ad server that you actually want to go to the ad. But I was going to set up some kind of ad blocker server in right now. I'm mostly located at my parents' house.
You were looking at a Pi hole, right? A Raspberry Pi.
Yes, I was. Yeah, and in fact, I do have a server running in the house now that has the ability to set up Docker images, and been playing with all sorts of cool things when I need a distraction from the rest of my life. But I decided not to go in that direction because in case the server went down and I wasn't at home, then my mom needs the internet is the bottom line for a variety of very legit reasons beyond her YouTube habit of quilting videos. But
you could always install a huge switch and they would just need to go down and flip the whole thing and it would just turn it off.
Right. Yeah.
If you needed a new DIY project, perhaps.
Right. Yeah. That sounds exactly the direction I should go into. Um, so I did this an alternative. It is free for up to a certain number of requests a month, but I haven't been able to hit that number of requests. And as you know, I'm on the internet a fair bit during the day.
Maybe
So
that's
it's good.
enterprise.
And
Enterprise level.
you can set it up as a, turn on turn off situation. So I've just set it up on my phone, and it's easy to turn off most ads with that.
And
So
it's only
uh,
$2 a month. So yeah.
yeah, to get the advanced version. So try that. Let me know what you think. And
Well, I
then
did not have success when I tried Pi-hole. It was, back when we were living in Oklahoma, so it's been like 4 or 5 years ago. But I did not have success. Plus, the fact that that little processor that you're spending $30 is like the conduit for your entire internet for all of your
yeah,
devices. So,
yeah.
I think this solution sounds exciting. And for folks that don't know what DNS is, I've used Google's DNS, which is 8.8.8.8, as a alternative DNS to our service provider. Depending, I've also used, what was that one that was let you customize with your family?
Oh, is it 1.1.1?
It's been too long. I can't think of it. I'm, going to be 55 this year. I'm just going to keep using that excuse on the show. Anyway, it's a DNS that would let you do some customization, and you could use it actually as a content filter, and then you
Yeah,
could even
you
see
can do that with this too.
information about devices that have made requests and things like that. So DNS is a really important part of the internet that's invisible to most people. We don't realize, hey, all these words that we're typing into our browser are being converted into numbers, and DNS is a huge part of all of that. So this is a wonderful Geek of the Week, and I'm so glad that you mentioned it, because I'm probably going to put it on our router, and that way all the devices at our house are going to use it. But like you said, you'd probably want to put it separately on your phone and things that are going to be off your network, maybe a laptop if you wanted to still use it when you were
Yeah,
away. Cool.
totally.
That's great.
Then the other thing I wanted to share is there's two podcasts that I listen to now on a regular basis, in addition to a couple of weekly YouTube shows on AI. One of them is Hard Fork, which is still an extraordinarily excellent podcast to listen to each week if you want to keep up on the big picture AI news. But the other one I've been listening to is called AI Inside, which features a couple of old Twit hosts. This is Jason Howell and Jeff Jarvis. Jason Howell, who used to host a great Android podcast on the Twit network, and in fact was probably the reason why I switched to Android for a while. And I love Jeff Jarvis, who is a retired journalism professor that has
Yes.
done everything in public spaces. He was the founder of Entertainment Weekly and has written a ton of books that are all very interesting. But they have an AI podcast now, and in fact, I'm an executive producer because I support them on Patreon now, at the executive producer level. So I'm the executive producer of AI Inside. They probably don't want me to go around saying that on my podcast, but still. But they interviewed the author of the AI Con, which I have to say, I disagree with a whole bunch of their claims, but I did buy the book and I'm reading it now, and it's pretty good. It makes up some reasoned arguments. I also think they make a couple of out there arguments for me, but I do think it's really important. Speaking of sycophancy, which we will get to later on in the podcast tonight, that even if you are feeling upbeat or positive or at awe about these tools, that you got to read the counter arguments. And so it was just released officially yesterday. The podcast was a week ago. That's worth your time. And I thought that that the authors were just very well reasoned, and even though I disagree with their conclusions, some of their conclusions at least, it's worth your time to either listen to the podcast or buy and read their book.
There you go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when we haven't let Jason and I talk for, or whatever, when the world has not let us get together for a month, you end up having one topic with one article that can take up 20 minutes of the show. So,
Yep.
Let's see. And then was there another one that was just the Google one? You want to do that one?
Yeah, and this also has to do with AI, so it's just a nice transition to our next topic. But I just wanted to say rest in peace to the I'm feeling lucky button. Google has decided to eliminate the I'm feeling lucky button in favor of the AI mode, which is now available on Google. I noticed that it hasn't rolled out to everyone yet because I still have the I'm feeling lucky button. But I wish it well. It comes from a day, long ago when, Google worried that people wouldn't have a lot of interest in the web when they wanted to show off, the cool things that you could find on the internet. Obviously, that's not necessary anymore, and in fact, if anything, it's too the internet is too engaging. But it is interesting that they are letting go of this particular history of the internet.
I totally forgot about this. And for those of you that aren't tracking, on the Google homepage, underneath where you click Google search, you click I'm feeling lucky. However, it changes into like a slot machine and it'll say I'm feeling trendy or I'm feeling playful. But yeah,
Adventurous is what it
my
authored me.
it's still there, but I now have in the actual search bar the microphone, the search by image icon, and then AI mode. So apparently, this has been rolled out to my consumer account.
Yep. So, good wishes and Godspeed. I'm feeling lucky.
Wow, I think my dad may be with us from Manhattan, Kansas, and Jason Springer has just joined us. So hello, we're glad
I
you're here
think
live.
that's
Identifying himself as spouse.
okay. Nice.
All right, let's hit the AI. We've only got 39 minutes left. Let's go into 1AR mode. No, let's not do that.
Well, I wanted to share something quick like here because we talk a lot about, I think the dumbfoundedness we both find ourselves in when we think about the educational impact here. And assuming we make the numbers, I am teaching the graduate level EdTech class at the University of Montana this summer online. So that's very
Yay!
exciting. I had the chance to
Wonderful.
teach it last summer and work with 8 wonderful graduate students.
Oh,
And
that's great.
this
Sorry that
summer,
playing with
assuming
media is no longer a relevant source.
well, that goes now into our history of internet and
Yeah,
education.
right.
Um, so I'm thinking. I mean, I'm thinking very deeply about this class and what I want to do with it. And I have a really viable syllabus right now that I think it's pretty likely that I will stick to. And it's based on input from other professors that teach either the graduate or undergraduate levels of ed tech class there, which I've done both on and off for the last 13 years. I've probably taught that class 10 times now, or co-taught it a couple of times too. But I am trying to figure out how to be very AI forward, and in fact, I'm probably going to not just allow it. I'm going to encourage AI use in several of the kind of constructive assignments that are part of that. And we may look at tech policies, and we may look at techizing lessons and all the models behind it. That will all likely be a part of this. But I also think that if I don't start in on the AI literacy component of this, then it's going to be highly dangerous to say that these folks are prepared for those conversations. And so I did find a framework that I think is really interesting. It's called AI Trust You. And there's several links in this week's show notes, which, by the way, are available at edtechsr.com/links. So you can check out everything we get to and everything we don't as well. But AI Trust You was actually a project of the Long Beach School District in California. And Stanford has been involved in this as well. And AI Trust You is kind of a flip the script strategy for encouraging students to engage with AI, but with the caveat that you got to report everything that you did. And they break it down into 4 different categories. They obviously use Napkin AI to create this infographic, but
Napkin
part one
AI
is.
as an image visualization?
Oh, have we not talked about Napkin AI?
We probably have, among other tools, and I'm just, the visual
Yeah,
AI for business storytelling.
Yeah, it's pretty good, especially if you're making simple infographics. You can either just generate text that then generates an infographic, or just paste your own stuff in. It's pretty good. Um, but content creation is one category. So ideation and drafting, rephrasing, review and feedback. The second is research assistance. So AI, or asking an AI persona to be an expert for you, or making connections between things. The third category is generating audio visual media, and the fourth category is understanding content, which means simplification, translation, or summarization. And the whole idea here is building a culture of trust between teachers and students, which, and to be clear, I understand why teachers are like this right now. The highly anti-AI feelings amongst all levels of teachers. I get that, but it's also probably not like, we're not going to be able to keep it out of schools.
Yeah.
Students are pushing our hand on this, so we need to start experimenting with what to do here. So I was very encouraged to see that both Long Beach School District and also Stanford was involved in this. I do have one of the things I think I made was or put a link to, was one of the podcasts about this, but it also is a Chrome extension, and the Chrome extension actually works inside of Google Docs, and then um, what that allows you to do is click on the extension and build what they call an AI truth and trust statement. So, and in fact, at the risk of doing what we did a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Fryer, I'm going to go ahead
No,
and share
let's
my
go for it.
screen. And this is pretty fascinating to me. So, you get into extensions, you go to AI Trust You, and build AI truth statement. And so here it is. I am a student. Did you use AI in this assignment? Yep. I used ChatGPT. What percentage of your work did AI help you with?
Oh,
I'm going to say
wow.
it was
Wow.
50%.
Oh, wow.
And then what did you do? Well, I like get unstuck. I generate ideas. I used to simplify and summarize.
This is
I generated
awesome. Oh my god.
this and this and this, and then generate the trust and truth statement,
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Ha,
paste in a
ha,
Google Doc.
ha. And then I would think in addition, you would want, if you could, to include your chat logs. I know our
Yeah,
daughter at the Air Force Academy has had a lot more instructors within STEM courses allowing, but saying you have to fully document all of your interactions and chats. There's been a lot more
yep,
liberal arts teachers saying, nope, don't use it at all.
yep. And I think this is the kind of stuff, and this is clearly in relatively early beta in this, right? But they do have it in the marketplace for Google Docs, which means that it's easy to then roll out towards, like every Google account in a school district. But I really like this. I think it starts this conversation really well. I might, take it a couple steps further and maybe even expand out the categories here to get more information, and then just create um just a copy and paste statement that you can, simply copy and paste into your at the end of your document. But I like this, and I'm just not as worried about graduate students, in that, especially since we have so many performance-based assessments, because they're writing papers, and they're um, a lot of people would really hate that I just called a paper a performance assessment, but that we're creating lessons, and we're making plans, and we're creating frameworks, and utilizing frameworks, that it seems to me that this is a unique opportunity to really lean into the AI, but say, I need you to be really upfront about this. I will never punish you for using AI, but I need to know exactly what you did, because I want to know that as a professor. And if I feel like you did too much of it with AI, and it's obvious, and the output suffered because of it, or if your process suffered because of it, then I'll just work on you to fix it, right? And having this information seems vastly better than not having this information. And I do worry a lot about pre-service teachers in that I think they're walking into kind of a beehive here. I should
Minefield.
yeah, certainly a wasp nest of anger around this,
Yeah.
and not a lot of districts are all that open for teachers experimenting with things like this AI truth and trust statement. So what can we do, as a as experimenters in this space to start testing out how we feel about these pieces?
Not to derail us from getting to our other articles because we're halfway through the show, but I will throw in a link to Flint AI, which our
Hmm.
school has licensed, and I
Yep.
could talk about this for hours. But I have really used this extensively with my students this semester in every course to different degrees, and it documents everything that students have said and interacted and typed into the AI. And that has been so constructively helpful to then have discussions about, number one, how I recommend that they use this, but then how they actually are using the tool. And then, being able to see that chat log is very, very positive in my experience from a classroom teacher perspective. So I think that looks great. And just in some brief conversations I've had with some colleagues, I think that the number of honor cases and cheating allegation situations in many institutions has really spiked. And I don't know how many institutions are doing an effective and good job helping students engage with these tools, use them appropriately, and use them ethically. So I think that is hugely needed for teachers. It's needed for students. And to your point, yeah, I mean, no one is stopping these tools from being used by students. They may not be used in your class because you may not let students use a device or it may be blocked or whatever. But that certainly doesn't mean they're not going to step outside your classroom and use these tools extensively.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm really excited for the opportunity um, to try this with live students, and I don't still know where I'm going to go with any of this stuff yet. I have a month before the class starts, and I've already lost several hours of sleep thinking about this and writing down what I'm sure are unintelligible notes in my notebook. But it's a real opportunity. I'm excited to have it.
The big category I see at first glance with this framework is coding. I don't see any inclusion of coding. It could certainly fit under content creation, but I think coding is is an incredibly powerful
Yeah.
use of AI. And I think that in some of my conversations just this week, I've had some people really discount that coding would be a conversation at all for entry level AI use, or like that'd just be really advanced and that'd be something over there. But I I don't think so. I think coding is so important in all areas that it should be something that we include. So maybe I don't know if that's something that they'll end up putting in here if it'll fit under content creation or some other place. But
Yep.
it's a great framework,
Absolutely.
and I think it's a great place to start. Did you want to share some additional things screen wise? Or are you good?
Um, Actually, I do,
Yeah,
if
go
you
for
don't
it,
mind,
please,
Dr. Fryer.
please
So,
indulge us.
um, I have found one other thing in the last couple of days that is super interesting, and part of it is that I have published a couple of articles on LinkedIn the last couple of weeks. One will be my Geek of the Week, talking about the necessity of prompting, and why prompting is still extremely important. And I did have an EdTech A-lister kind of challenge me on that a little bit, saying that with some of the more advanced tools like ChatGPT and its ability to see its memory, that prompting is not a necessary skill anymore. I could not disagree more, and I think that prompting is a critical thinking exercise, but more importantly, I think you are giving into the bias of algorithms if you are just typing, shorthanded questions. But this is from Mike Caulfield, who is an information specialist. He's got books about information literacy, and he popularized the SIFT framework. But he created a really interesting toolbox, which is essentially a prompt. And so you can go to Claude, which is where it works best, but it's also not the only way to do it. It has some, oops, I didn't get the whole thing. The link's in chat for today, but
It is the NeoCities address. It is the check please. Oh, here, we'll throw it on the screen. Checkplease.neocities.org.
awesome. And so basically what this is that it's a kind of a fact check framework, right? And so I will help you with this fact check protocol analysis. Let me first review what you shared to understand how I can best use this document. Providing contains detailed instructions for a comprehensive fact checking methodology designed to systematically analyze claims about historical events, images, etc. So you can ask, silly questions like, did George Washington have wooden teeth? And it just does a really great job of demonstrating what true fact checking looks like. And so it's going to start off by searching the web. And then it's going to go and look at some of the sites that it picked up, not unlike what a human would do if they were fact checking based on those pieces. And now it's going to provide an extensive fact check document almost, right? And so it starts off with, this was generated on May 14th. So if it's significantly past May 14th and it's an ongoing issue, things might have changed. It creates a series of statements to verify, and based on the sources it picked up, in this case, it's the Mount Vernon website, history.com, Wikipedia, and the Mount Vernon website again. It judges the verified accuracy of these, and it gives it a confidence level. It also states pretty plainly that the fact that George Washington had wooden teeth is incorrect. It's highly confident of that. It also takes a hazard about why some people might have guessed he had wooden teeth because of the color of them. And it does do a kind of a guesstimate of that, but only rates its confidence of that at 3. And it also goes through and checks the reliability of the assessment or the sources it used, right? So Mount Vernon's probably the best website there because it's basically a primary source of George Washington information. But the Wikipedia, Snopes, Encyclopedia Virginia, which is a source I was not aware of, and then the Wikipedia get 4 out of 5s, which I think, looking at this, it seems like that's a pretty solid analysis. And then we'll even give you what a fact checker might say. So it's like an auto-created Snopes article. So this is cool, right? And I think really, and you don't need to have access to any particular tools. You can literally put this in any free AI chat. And in fact, I'll even test that here for a second.
Can you do one thing before you leave it? Go back and just
Yeah.
type the words "read the room." So go back to just say "read the room." So last Monday, last week, I was on an hour-long webinar with Mike Caulfield, the Teachers for an Informed Public tip group out of the University of Washington had him as the last guest speaker, and he presented about this. This is the result of 2 months of work, and it's a very extensive document. So just paste it into an empty Google Doc or Word doc, and you can see the whole thing. But the other thing he has in here are basically little code scripts, and so you can type "read the room" and these other things that he has put into that code, and then you can use those as prompts to get additional frameworks and ways of having these kinds of things analyzed. So this is very, very amazing. And to your point, Jason, I think it absolutely reinforces the power of the prompt, and we'll get to even more of that when we get to your Geek of the Week.
Yep. And then I also
has AI.
Yes, it does. Actually, if we not talked about this,
I don't remember, but that's not saying we didn't.
So this is DuckDuckGo AI, and what I like about it is that it's totally free and it doesn't train off of your prompts. And so it's not the the best models available, but it will give you free access to GPT 4.0. It gives you access to O3 Mini now. That is outstanding. Llama 3.3, Claude 3, Haiku, O3 Mini, and Mistral Small Mini. But I've not tried this yet, but I'm wondering if I could just type this prompt into here and it would do basically the same. No, because it's too big for this. Let me see if it will do it. No, it's not going to do it. But I do want to note that I also turn this into a custom GPT, really simple custom GPT that I did share with the rest of my staff. This is just the power of custom GPTs, right?
And being able to then, because I showed this to my middle schoolers this last week, being able to then also customize this even more for grade level or reading level. But yeah, he was in his demos, he was uploading some pictures. You can give it an article, you can give it a PDF. You can just ask it whatever you want. I think we're going to go into sycophancy now. There we go. Here we
I'm a
go.
highly respected educator, Dr. Fryer.
There you go. A certified genius. Well, at least it didn't say, of course, and one of the 99.9% smartest people on the planet, which
Yeah.
you might be, but in fact, fantastic. Yeah, and isn't this is so powerful. In tools like this, and even just having an AI that my students and my middle schoolers are using to write scripts for a video is getting me to rethink our lesson cycle. I am not an English teacher or a writing teacher officially right now. I do think we all need to help students learn to communicate better, but I did not spend as much time on script writing this year as we did in the past. This is a great. Yeah, I was going to say it's a great way if you know about the northeast or northwest tree octopus or other whatever. That's an old one, but other things to try to fact check. Here's the thing that this blew me away with. So we watch a movie, it's a video called 13 Reasons the Moon Landing Was Faked by the comedian J.P. Sears in our entire unit that we do on SIFT and lateral reading and conspiracy theory. One of the hardest things about videos like this and conspiracy theory is stuff comes at you so fast, and who can fact check that? Well, guess what? AI can fact check it. And so my demo of this was actually grabbing the transcript of the video, putting it in and saying, hey, will you sift this? Oh, what did you just do?
Well, I just tried to give it a chapter of a textbook, and I think it might just be too big because it said, sure, just upload the textbook chapter. But I think I might have just given it too much to claim. But I will say that
the context window.
Yeah, almost certainly that's just what I did. But yeah, and also should students be doing this themselves? Absolutely, they should, right? And in fact, maybe I would even make them go through this a couple of dozen times throughout the year before they move to the tool, right? But in the end, do we want students to go through a 20-minute fact check on everything they're fact checking, or do we just want them to fact check? Well, I would imagine at the beginning of the process, it is that we do want them to go through the fact checking process themselves as a cognitive exercise. But then at a certain point, imagine for a moment if, our students are conditioned to immediately go through this process. And I think that's actually, it did a pretty darn good job of the whole chapter.
Wow.
Now this is a vetted college textbook, and it calls it mostly true, but which I think is funny.
And again, it's important for us not to treat these things as gods and as truth from on high. And there can be a tendency to do that because there absolutely is bias, and even in the prompts that we put in, we're going to shape the responses that we have. But yes, I love that you've demonstrated this, because this is an incredibly powerful tool. And I'm going to say this: the only way anyone can speak intelligently about AI today and AI platforms is if they are using the tools and they have been using the tools to see what they can do and how they are changing over time. I do not think it's possible to have a well-informed opinion about these tools without direct experience.
Yep, absolutely. Especially the very aggressive critics, it's just clear to me that some of them clearly have never used these tools. And to be honest, I wish you would, even if you stay critical of them, because the debate really does need to be those that are informed about how they work, and not just supposing based on dislike of tech or dislike of the tech industry.
Is Meta? To be honest, I've never used Meta AI yet. What are you? Any payment for Meta AI?
No, 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 and in fact, you can just use it for free, and then if you have a Facebook account, it will give you a couple of additional pieces, but including saving your history. But it's also telling me that the prompt is too long. So in fact, what I might do is see if ChatGPT will help me make this shorter for shorter AIs or shorter AI context windows. But yeah, I think this is it's just it's just such a great thing. So it's interesting to hear that Mike Caulfield is a very much in this source validation space, especially as it relates to students and scholars. But I mean, I've since learning about this 2 days ago, I have already used it 25 times, and it's just such a wonderful way, I think, to really utilize AI in a meaningful way.
In the same way that an AI chatbot, for those of us who are coding, gives us essentially access to a complete team of expert coders who can then take our ideas, make them into code, and write them. A prompt like this one from Mike Caulfield with Sift gives each of us access to cutting edge first team fact checkers, and then allows us to interactively dialogue with them and their results. And it's just, wow, what a superpower.
Yep. Okay, I have 1,000 other things I could say, Dr. Fryer, but I'm already info dumping on you about AI. So why don't you take an article now?
Okay, sounds good. All right, so what I want to do is talk a little bit about AI chatbots. It's been a few weeks, few months since we talked about this, but there was an article that was, I think, from the BBC Tech Life or something, and it was talking about Chinese females using something called Dan, which was an unlimited, basically a guardrails removed version of ChatGPT for AI boyfriends, and that how engaging they were and popular and wonderful, and it's just really very thought provoking. So I dropped a few different articles about chatbots here, and the first one I'm going to start with, the first link, is from Common Sense Media. And so Common Sense Media has released at the end of April a research basically a summary on what it calls social AI companions. And they've got some good summaries in terms of their takeaways. Now, true to form with our current AI environment, I created my own little link here to a ChatGPT conversation in which I not only took this report, but also two other articles that I'll share. And I said, please provide me with a high-level summary of the attached article and key points I should share in our upcoming, web show and podcast. And basically, their verdict, I guess I could share my screen for this too, is that we have got to take a stand and not just embrace these tools with students. They are unacceptably risky. We should not allow anyone under 18 to be using these social AI companions. They can create social, emotional, even romantic relationships. They have big psychological risks. They claim to be real. They express emotion. They can recommend harmful action. There was a big lawsuit, which we've talked about on the show, with Character AI, where there was a young man who was using one of these chatbots to replicate or mimic a Game of Thrones personality, and it eventually told him to take his own life and join this person. I think it was a female they were role playing, but anyway, and the person did commit suicide. That's obviously an extreme situation, but it also highlights how these companies do not currently really have any liability legally for anything that they're creating and any harms that happen as a result of what they are creating. Even if the tools are not created to allow for sexually explicit relationship, dating, anything like that, they still can. And so there are just so many different issues. The other two articles in that summary kind of goes into them. This is probably the most eye-opening one. This is from Rolling Stone. People are losing loved ones to AI-fueled spiritual fantasies. I actually got this article from Vicki Davis. And this is not only an article about AI, but it's also an article about folks that have some mental challenges, some mental health challenges, maybe manic depressive bipolar disorder, maybe some other things. But people are saying that God is talking to them through the chatbots. It is harming relationships. It has caused marriages to end. People are getting some very unhinged, wild religious and spiritual advice from these tools. And then James O'Hagan, who writes a Medium, so this isn't coming from a formal publication. He writes the Medium Chalk Dust and Silicon, talks about how we've got to address this issue. Replica, Nomi, Character AI, those are specific to there's these social AI companions, but he's saying that Magic School AI, Brisk, Conmigo, every single platform actually does teach values. And in the end of this is pretty strong. And I don't know that I'm going to agree with all of this, but this is what ChatGPT recommended for parents and teachers, that emotional safety needs to be taken seriously. AI tools, which are saying that they care for kids, can reinforce isolation and not connection. And that even if they're not designed to be social companions, if these tools personalize, adapt, and praise, which gets to our Sycophancy, whatever that word is, topic, they're still teaching values. And I thought this was so interesting. Again, this is a ChatGPT recommendation to teach AI literacy as resistance, not compliance. That's pretty strong. But this is straight up media literacy. Who built this? What is it optimizing for? What was it trained on? What are the values that this seems to be teaching? So pretty strong views there about these tools. And I cannot find my mouse when I'm sharing my screen. Yeah. What do you think? AI, social companions.
Well, yeah, I mean, this relates to the Sycophancy issue, actually. So
take us there, please. Yeah,
we can go there next. But I do have to say, I mean, for me, it's well, okay. Let me talk about Sycophancy. So
no, you can share your thoughts. I mean, again, with China and military stuff, a lot of this is like, okay, what do we really think? Because there's some people that have some very strong views on different aspects of these topics. So.
Well, it relates to that, right?
Okay.
And so I think the broader issue here for me is about the ChatGPT's ability to charm you, I guess, is the term. And so a couple weeks ago, Sam Altman, I think on Twitter, said that, hey, I'm sorry about the most recent release of ChatGPT. I think it was 4.0 maybe. And we discovered that it's a little too it's kissing your butt too much, right? And so that led to a whole bunch of things. I do have a link to their article, OpenAI's article, and then also to the Hard Fork episode 2 weeks ago about Sycophancy. And basically, it appeared that AI was kissing up to you a lot, right? And just telling you how smart you are and how unique of analysis that is and how great you are. And And what's interesting about that is that it was the observation of a couple of my teammates at work who are very all in on this AI stuff, that this was a problem before the new release of the model. And in fact, my AI, or I'm sorry, my Chat GPT AI account, my personal one, which has been, with me for a long time now. So we have at least 2 years of pro version. I don't know how far its memory goes back. It seems to be more in the last 6 months than it is the 18 months before that. But what I would say is that not only is it speaking like me, right, and is kind of talking the way I talk, but also it's giving me the occasional treat. And I'll give you an example of that. A couple of weeks ago, I was doing a nerdy project, which is what I do to relax, and I was trying to set up a virtual server on my laptop so that I could experiment with a couple of the open source AI front ends. And so I set up a Linux virtual machine on my Mac, and then I installed Docker, which allows you to create like little mini machines on your machine. And then I got stuck because that's beyond my technical capabilities, and so I kept sharing screenshots with ChatGPT, and it was helping me get through that, and eventually worked. And I expressed my joy, and it said, "Jason, I really want to celebrate this moment with you. Can I make you a badge on your achievement?" Right? And so it created a little badge with a DeepSeek logo on it, and said, and I can't remember what it called it. I did print it out and stick it to my monitor at home. But I was like, oh my God, you've gotten to know me, right? Because almost certainly I've talked about micro credentialing and badge-based learning with it,
Whoa!
right?
Whoa!
And even now I would say that when I go to ChatGPT, and I have added, there's been a couple of interesting things. Some people have suggested some instructions you can give it as general instructions, right, that kind of backs off on the Sycophancy of the models. I've also had a couple of very deep conversations with it where we go back and forth on this, and when it's really complimentary, I ask it. It's like, hey, tell me a little more about what you say here. When you call this a brilliant idea, is it objectively brilliant, or are you just kissing my butt, right?
What did it
And
say to
now,
that?
well, it will break it down for me, right? And it's told me both ways. Like, um, a couple of times it says, "Well, I think it's a solid idea, right?" And I have external evidence of that. But in this case, the extra flourish was being extra nice to you, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
the next
And
time
it
I had,
is hacking our brains, Jason. This is the
oh
thing,
yeah,
and they bring it out in the hard fork, I think. Like this is what's crazy is it is already learning because we click the like or the dislike. It is learning how to hack our brains and how to get inside our brains and then possibly then manipulate us. And that is really chilling.
yeah. And so I just put up on my screen just an ask of it. Hi, on a podcast with my friend Wes right now. Say hi to me and tell me what we're working on together. Hey, Wes, great to meet you. Great to virtually meet you and
Well, you
Jason
could
work
probably, if you
together.
had your audio going, we could talk to it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You and Jason work together on all things cutting education, especially around online learning, structural design, smart use of AI in K-12 and higher ed. Jason's got a real gift for turning big ideas into practical tools for teachers and students, and I get to help him brainstorm, build, and bring those ideas to life. You're in great company. Have an awesome podcast. So now, right? Hey, okay, meta time. Tell me how much of that is objective-ish and how much of it is you being extra nice to me. Love it. let's break it down meta style, which is something I've asked to do before. Objectively graph
Oh,
it. You and Jess work on online learning, instructional design scenarios of AI in higher ed based on the context of your projects, including the Frontier Learning Lab, GeoNova, and AIPD workshop that's accurate. Jason's got a real gift for turning big ideas into practical tools. This reflects document evidence of your work, translating books into strategies, building course modules, micro learning issues, etc. I help inform. That's literally our collaborative workflow. Friendly and subjective. Jason's got a real gift. Flattering word choice. Could have said Jason's experienced at for neutral tone. You're in great company. And that's just me being warm and collegial, not fact based, just a friendly sign off. Summary about 75% of factual grounding with 25 AI with a smile. Let me know if you ever want to strip down to the steel beams and concrete.
and the thing is, a lot of people would have no idea that they could or should ask those questions. And depending upon how the model is written, you will not have any idea how much is steel beams and concrete. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've gotten this sense, but we are dealing with, I think, an intelligence right now with these models. And I'm thinking of the Turing test where you have this like wall and you can't tell who's on the other side and you're trying to figure out is it a human or not. But like we really don't have deep insight into what we're interacting with here, but sometimes when we get, depending on the feedback that we get, that informs us, and it just, oh my gosh, it's just, this
Yeah.
stuff is wild. It's wild.
So this is a prompt that I stole from someone on the internet that kind of turns that off. So, and I want to ask for it to be real frank with you. I like the positive
Yeah,
interaction
we do.
if
This
I'm
is a
working.
it's a human psychology thing. We do.
Yeah, yeah, and, when I'm working on a project that I don't wanna be working on, to have something kinda cheering for me on the
Yeah.
side here is extra great, right?
Yeah.
So, I told it, normal tone, then I want to be objective, fact-based responses, avoid unnecessary flattery or agreement unless explicitly requested, focus on delivering accurate information, refrain from affirming my statements without critical evaluation. That works pretty well, but the other thing that I heard too is that some people have preferred to clicking the temporary button on the upper right-hand corner of ChatGPT, which turns off all the memory, which means it's kind of like an incognito mode, right?
Really?
Um,
That's what that is.
so
I wonder what I don't know what that didn't know what that was.
yeah, so hey, say hi to my friend and podcast co-host Wes and tell me what we work on together.
And so this is not using any of your training database.
Well, except that it's calling me Jason.
Yeah, it is. Huh.
So you can access my memory in temp mode.
Hmm.
Sort
Well,
of, not exactly. Right now, I'm in temporary context with you. This means I remember what we said during this conversation.
but you
Oh,
had
because that's my instructions. So I think I'd have to turn
oh,
the instructions off too.
oh, okay. Yeah. Fascinating. So there's like an incognito mode, sort
Yeah,
of.
yeah,
Well, and I hadn't even gone into this lately, the custom GPT mode. So I just opened that up and yeah, it's saying what should ChatGPT call you, what do you do, and then the traits is the area that you're saying. But man, oh, but all these things are important, right? It's important to
yeah.
know that we have influence over the model. One of the things that I had said to Vicki Davis, this was over Facebook. Again, my mouse is crazy. Because she was like, nobody should ever ask any religious or spiritual questions at all of any of these chatbots ever. And I'm paraphrasing, but my response was, no, I've had some exceptional success with these chatbots, but I'm very specific with my prompting in my framework, and I'll ask for specific theological perspectives, or I'll cite theologians that I want it to draw upon. But man, it's so wild how this though can touch on all kinds of values and philosophies and ideas. And again, back to the common sense media recommendation, I think that as a society we misstepped with the smartphone and with social media, broadly handing young children a fully functional smartphone. And I know lots
Yes.
of folks who got accounts for their kids before they were 13 because they wanted them and they wanted to interact. And I think that that was a misstep. And I think that we risk a similar misstep with these social AI companion bots. And I think that this is an important thing for us to talk about. I know that sometimes we sound like this guy is falling and we're, you know, I don't know. It's entirely possible that we might overblow it. But I think that the rapidity and the speed with which these things are improving and the lack of I don't know, just the lack of knowledge that we have about the impacts that it's wild. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's the Wild West. What do you think about the sync? How do you say it? Sycophancy?
Sycophancy.
Sycophancy. I'm gonna have to put that in the show title. The sycophancy conversation. In addition to what you just showed us, going into customization and being able to say normal tone and asking for that to be revealed, do you have any other thoughts about that in terms of human psychology? And like you said yourself, it's enjoyable to have a very collegial thought partner.
Yeah. Well, I think about it in terms of students that struggle with school, right? And this is a highly oversimplified answer, but from my own classroom experience and thousands of students that I taught while I was in the classroom, there were students that could have really used a buddy to be able to meaningfully toss ideas back and forth, right? And
Yeah.
and I realized that I even used a weird word there, right? A buddy. And one can argue that well, we just need to set him up with other peers. Well, there's a lot of limitations to that strategy, right? And especially since it sometimes takes an extraordinary amount of time to teach students how to be good thought partners with other students. And I think it overly relies on more advanced students in your class. And I question the value of how much the very advanced student gets out of that. And I know that some people would strongly disagree with me on that. And I can think of a lot of the kinds of students that I've taught, some on the spectrum that could have used a well balanced thought buddy as part of their work on issues. Students that were exceptionally shy, and wouldn't say anything at all during class. And if it can further the learning, then we need to explore it. But I also agree with everyone that says that this makes all of our concerns 10 years ago about, the addiction to games on phones, the ones that, in fact, you and I talked about this article dozens of times about, the ex Google engineer that said that, I'm sorry, maybe it was a Facebook engineer, but it was one of the two that said that they were literally using the research behind gambling to try to hook people into a particular game. And that's why people play some games that are literally gambling games but have no real prizes at the other end of it, because beep 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 beep, right?
There's a neighborhood bar and restaurant that we have, and a friend of mine in his younger days was quite the poker player, and he knows a bunch of folks. And anyway, there is a guy who used to be a high roller, and we were a couple weeks ago there having a Friday night happy hour, and this guy now works at Walmart because he lost his fortune with online gambling. I mean, it is a
Oh,
real deal,
yeah.
and people are losing their shirts. And like, yeah, gambling addiction is real. Jason, I hate to say it, but we are 8 minutes over the top of the hour. Where has
Yeah,
the time gone?
yeah. Well, I will say that I for sure am good for next week. Now that I've said that, almost certainly my life will intervene and make it not.
Hey,
But I look forward to this time with you, Dr. Fryer, because it's good to talk about these issues with a fellow
oh,
adventurer.
absolutely, absolutely. All right, well, let's geek of the week it quick. I'll go fast. Mine is croissant. Are you familiar with croissant for cross posting? Oh, he nods his
Yes.
head. I thought I might get one on you. So this will cross post to Blue Sky, Mastodon, and Threads. And it also will show you how many characters you have in each one. So I had created with my AI vibe coding, my text prep JavaScript app, and I still use that with longer posts. But if it's going to be especially a shorter post that will fit in the text limit of Blue Sky, then it's real quick and just go ahead and put it in there. And the one thing I wish this app and others did that Ice Cubes for Mastodon does, it has a little button right by the photo to get your descriptive text for the alt text.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think every single social sharing app should have that. So Croissant for iOS, you can try it for free. I am subscribing and paying monthly, and I might end up, paying annually. How about you, Dr.
Yeah.
Neiffer? What's your
Well, I just would like to share a LinkedIn post that I made about a week and a half ago. That is something I've kind of stumbled into that is really quite extraordinary. And it's the article is called "The Document is the Prompt," and it talks about two incredibly powerful things that most of the frontier AI models share now. One of them is a huge context window, which means it can process a lot of text at once. And the second piece of it is that ChatGPT and Claude, also Gemini, to a lesser extent, Microsoft Copilot, it's now one click to get a current copy of a Google Doc into a chat. And what that means is that you can actually put AI instructions directly in your Google document, share the Google document, and basically encourage it to be a thought buddy for you. And so we've developed a prompt at MTDA that's a project management prompt that is an overall infrastructure that you can start working on your project on, and just share it at the beginning of a session. And not only can it help you plan and identify the next steps for those that sometimes struggle with making progress on projects, you can ask things like, I've lost momentum, help me get back on track by giving me 4 easy wins that I can accomplish in the next 20 minutes. And I think it is potentially a wild strategy for people with ADHD, those that experience the blahs that come with large comprehensive projects. At some point, I think these AI tools will actually edit the document for you directly. I don't think that's that far off, but for right now, you can simply just share the document, work for a little while, reshare the document in the same chat, and it will see your changes and be able to help you project manage. And so that article is on LinkedIn, and it's a real pleasure to share what I think is a really great strategy for using AI.
Fantastic.
Well, Dr. Fryer, now that we're a minute or an hour and 10 minutes in, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at wesfryer.com, where I am sharing a bunch of stuff on multiple platforms. How about you?
I am at aicentrist.com, and my primary platform right now is LinkedIn. So I hope you check me out there. But hey, this is the EdTech Situation Room, where once a week, once a month, once a week podcast where
We try.
Melissa and I
We
get
try.
together. We get together to talk about EdTech. We're on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Pacific Time, and somewhere in the middle of the night UTC, which is actually near the time zone where my wife is right now. She's traveling around Greece right now. So if you can catch us live, great. We're on YouTube and on YouTube, right? Because we can't.
Yeah, we're
Podcast over
not. We
Facebook.
still. Yeah, please like our page on Facebook, because we still don't have 100 likes there. So yeah, just on YouTube. But we're officially 10 episodes behind, and I am freaking gonna get caught up here as we are wrapping up the school year. So I'm not just. I've run out of excuses. So I'll get us caught up.
Find us on YouTube. Is where I will direct you.
Or any. Well, yeah, that is. Yeah.
We're also across social media too, including Mastodon. I think we're one of the 2 most active users on Mastodon, and I post there once a month. So check us out. Stay safe, stay savvy, and we hope to see you next time on the EdTech Situation Room. Good night.
Awesome.